And let me know, Ben, when you think we're live.
Will do. Okay, we're all good.
Great. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I am State Senator Mark Lawrence, and this is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. With me this morning are the members of the committee, and I'm going to first allow my co-chair, Representative Seth Berry, to introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Seth Berry, and I represent House District 55, which is Bowdoin, Bowdenham, almost all of Richmond, and beautiful Swan Island on the Kennebec, where you can walk across the ice and visit now if you're careful, but I don't recommend it too much longer.
Great. And now I'm going to go around the virtual horseshoe to introduce, allow members of the committee to introduce themselves and to tell us what district they represent. So I'll start off with our Republican House lead, Representative Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nate Wadsworth, and I represent District 70, Southern Oxford County.
Great. And I'll go on to Representative Chad Grignon. Chad? I think you're still muted, Chad. I think we may have you now. Try it.
Oh,
Yep, we got you, Chad.
you got me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, Representative Chad Grignon, representing District 118, Athens, Harmony, Solon, Bingham, north up into the Moose River Valley.
Great. And I will go on to Representative Barb Wood.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Barb Wood, and I represent House District 38, which is the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Great. And then on to Representative Chris Kessler.
Good morning. I am Chris Kessler, representing District 32, which is a portion of South Portland and little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
Great. And as we're going through, before we do that, I just have one question for our analyst. Deirdre, you indicated you sent me the morning an updated script for the public hearings.
Yes.
But when I look in there, it's the schedule. Is the script also attached?
It was a separate email. I'll resend it to you if you'd like me to.
Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you. Just for the public's information, we're updating the script we normally do for public hearings to reflect the Zoom technology and the information we want to give you. I will go on to Representative Ziegler.
Good morning, everyone. I am Paige Ziegler. I represent District 96, the 7 towns in Multnomah County of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Now we're on to Representative Grochowski.
Good morning, all. Nicole Grochowski. I represent House District 132, which is the city of Ellsworth and the town of Trenton.
And then on to Representative Kessler.
Another bite at the apple here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm doing it. You must have.
But I'm Chris Kessler, representing District 32, which is a portion of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth, just in case you forgot.
And Representative Carlo.
Good morning, Representative Carlo from District 16, which is part of Buxton, all of Hollis, and part of Saco. Good to be with you.
And Representative Foster.
Good morning. My name's Steve Foster. I'm House Representative for District 104, which includes the towns of Garland, Exeter, Stetson, Charleston, and Dexter.
Thank you. And then Senator Vitelli.
Good morning. I'm Eloise Vitelli. I represent Senate District 23, which is all 10 towns in Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County.
Great. And I believe that concludes going around the virtual horseshoe. And Representative Kessler must have changed his seat during our presentation, and that's why I had to do him twice in the virtual horseshoe. So I just wanted to go over with you our procedures for public hearings. The committee is assembled electronically today for the purpose of inviting public comment on legislation. And before we get started, I just want to share some information related to the fact that this meeting is being conducted using an electronic format. This meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. This means that anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on the Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they are called upon to speak. This meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after the meeting has concluded. In a moment, I will have, I've already asked the committee members to introduce themselves. So we'll go on from that part of the introduction. If your name on your Zoom square is not the name you use to register to testify, it may be a bit of a challenge for us to identify you. For example, if you're registered as John Smith or Mary Jones and your Zoom says iPhone 6 or Dad's laptop, it would take an extra effort to get you to our virtual podium. Please be patient. You should also know that it may momentarily appear as though you have been dropped from the meeting when we call you up to speak. It takes a second or two, but rest assured you will reappear and you will then be able to provide your testimony. This format is new to all of us, and we expect that there will be unforeseen glitches and mistakes. Please be patient. We are doing our best, and we will all learn as we go along, hopefully, to improve the way these virtual hearings work. Thank you. A reminder to members of the committee about the Zoom chat function. This function is not to be used for substantive discussion by anybody. You should know that the chat window can be viewed by any person taking part in the meeting as a participant. Participants will include members of the committee, staff, and any members of the public during the time they have been promoted to participate for the purpose of providing testimony to the committee. All questions of the person testifying shall be made through the chair. So please don't post a question in the chat room to the person testifying. For each bill heard today, I or my co-chair, but in this case, my co-chair will be presenting the bill, so he will not be able to, will call on the sponsors and the co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, they will be promoted from attendee to participant. After the presentation by sponsors and co-sponsors, we will call on members of the public based upon how they are registered to testify. If you are registered for the bill, we'll call on you first, against the bill second, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide additional information, you will testify third. When you are called upon, please make sure that your microphone is not on mute. I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and your organization you represent, if any. Excuse me. After you are done speaking and there are no more questions from the members, I or the co-chair will return you to attendee and call upon the next person to register to testify. If you are not participating in any other hearings or work session after testifying, please exit the meeting and watch the remainder of the hearing on the committee's YouTube channel after you are returned to attendee status. If you need to exit the meeting before being called upon to testify, please be aware that you may submit written testimony at any time by accessing the legislature's submission page on www.legislature.maine.gov. Some final reminders. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded on YouTube. You can also be heard over the legislature's audio broadcast system. Any testimony you submit will be public and may be posted on the legislature's website. You will have, for people testifying for or against, or neither for nor against, you will have 3 minutes to speak, and we will let you know when it's your time to start. And just as a reminder to people, if you, for the public speaking for, against, or neither for nor against, if you step up, have your testimony, you're asked questions, and then you step down, you do not have an opportunity to step back up when other people are testifying to answer questions. Once you've completed that, you're done with your testimony, but you always have the ability to submit written answers to anything you hear in the rest of the hearing to the committee. And you can also come to our work session and submit materials for the work session to respond to their questions. And the purpose of that is not to cut you off or not to prevent additional information. The point is to allow these public hearings to go expeditiously through the process. We'll have over 200 bills probably this session. If we have 10, 20 people testifying on each bill, each hearing is going to take a significant amount of time, and we need to get through those public hearings so we can move on to the work sessions, so we can actually work on the bill and then report them out to the legislature. We're on very strict time crunches usually in the legislature to get these bills out in a matter of months. So that's why we put the limitations on testimony. Okay, I'll now turn to our first bill. And we're pleased today to have our co-chair, my co-chair be the sponsor of the bill. And I'll recognize Representative Seth Berry for the purposes of introducing LD, and you're going to have to help me with the number, Seth, because I don't have it up on my screen right now.
251.
251, and he will announce the title of the bill. Go ahead, Seth.
Great. And just for the purpose of everyone who's watching and perhaps waiting to testify, we will be taking these in numerical order. So 251, 285, and then 314. So with that, Senator Lawrence, fellow members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, my name is still Seth Berry, and today I'm pleased to present LD 251, which is an act regarding public utility assessments, fees, and penalties. This bill will look very familiar to those of you who were with us on the committee last session. That's because the 129th was poised to pass this legislation. I believe it had passed the House and was in the Senate when we unfortunately had to adjourn due to the pandemic in March. So this is the same language that the bipartisan committee report had supported. Thanks to all of you who were there then and supported it and are still serving on the committee. I hope we can get back to this bill and move it forward. Just for everyone's purposes, especially those who are new to it, what LD 251 would do is essentially update funding for our regulatory activities to protect Maine's utility customers and the natural resources that we depend on from I use this phrase advisedly, but it's really what regulators have to do from abuse by monopolies who would otherwise control the market. The nature of the regulatory exercise is to impose the discipline that the free market otherwise would. So I'm not suggesting that abuse is necessarily occurring. I'm suggesting that the purpose of regulators is to make sure it doesn't. And the bill better protects our rights to affordable clean energy and clean water, as well as other necessities like rural telephone service. And the way it does this, and this is the most important concept here, is to apply basic causation principles. In other words, those who cause the costs should pay for them. The Public Utilities Commission and the Office of the Public Advocate incur costs for their regulatory activity through a mix of three things: fees, penalties, and assessments. And the fees and penalties are paid for by the filing party. Typically, for example, a certificate of public convenience and necessity requires a fee. A penalty might be incurred if something is not done legally. Assessments, the last piece, is an extra charge on our utility bills. So we pay for that regulatory activity as customers. And my perception is that over the years, because the fees and penalties have been set at a dollar amount and have not kept up with inflation, in many cases, these are fixed amounts from 50 years ago, we're kind of more relying on the assessment piece that we all pay for rather than the piece that is caused by the cost causer. This cost shift is bad, obviously, for ratepayers, and it's especially impactful for our lower income Mainers because as the public advocate found in a report that came out in the fall of 2019, low income Mainers already pay one of the highest energy cost burdens in the nation. On average, someone who is subsisting on $16,000 a year, for example, is paying $4,000 per year in energy costs. That's all energy costs, including petroleum, but it's a high amount. So as we shift to clean energy, we need to be very conscious of that very high burden. It's 5 times what is typical for Mainers. The burden as a portion of income is 5 times what the typical Mainer pays. So we need to make sure this is equitable. The T&D world does require a lot, and transmission and distribution. So electrical utilities require the majority of the PUC and the public advocate's time. Investor-owned utilities are obviously 95% of that world. In water, it's almost the opposite that is true, but investor-owned utilities have been expanding in Maine, notably recently in Biddeford and Saco, where some very substantial proceedings have incurred some spikes in costs for the PUC, and that's been passed on to ratepayers across the water utility space, including in the nonprofit utilities, some of them very small, who frankly struggle when they're surprised with a significant assessment. That happened. In fact, that is what the genesis of this bill, that the water utilities came to me expressing concern about sudden impact, and it is the genesis of the bill. I do want to suggest that we may want to amend the bill further to really try to get at that sort of sudden and severe impact, and we can talk about that more. But just going back to fees and penalties, as I said, they're not keeping up with inflation. So to reorganize for a merger or acquisition or reorganization of a utility that involves the change in control, in recent years, the PUC has spent, and just the PUC, not the public advocate, but the PUC has spent in the vicinity of $250,000 to oversee and scrutinize and permit. In each cases, they did permit the reorganization of large utilities. That includes Maine Water that I mentioned earlier, which was in that ballpark, and also it includes Versant, the most recent reorganization of a large T&D. So $250,000, not a small amount, and the fee to apply for such a permit, the maximum that the PUC is allowed to charge right now is 1/5 of that amount. So who pays the rest of it? We do. The customer does, not the filing party. In the last 20 years, in fact, just the time that I've been on the committee, less than that, we've seen mergers or acquisitions of very, very large value in the billions. Bangor Hydro first by Emera, and then by Versant, CMP by Energy East, and then by Iberdrola, and then by Avangrid, Iberdrola, even a further reorganization there involving United Illuminating. Verizon was acquired by Fairpoint and then by Consolidated. The list goes on. These are very large, very complex, and very high value transactions. They require a lot of time on the part of our regulators to scrutinize and to protect the public interest. So big picture, we're all captive customers of our utility, whoever that utility is, whether it's consumer owned or investor owned. And we are all being forced to pay more to help increasingly distant investors apply for permits, do restructuring deals, and the reason they do it is to benefit their business. It's not done for charity, right? So let's be clear. The previous legislature was ready to pass this bill, and I think the logic that we all agreed upon at the time was we want to make sure that those who are responsible for costs of regulation are the ones who pay those costs. But this bill does another thing as well, bringing up it asks the PUC to report back to us on fees and penalties so that we can be aware of what needs to be updated for inflation. The idea here is to look at that $50,000 fee that I mentioned for reorganization and say that needs to come up, but also others like it. And in the case of the 50,000 fee, the bill does actually address that. It shifts that to a portion, 0.05% of the value of the reorganization. So in the case of the recent reorganization by CMP, for example, I believe it would be in the ballpark of $250,000. So the idea here is to protect the public interest in an increasingly complex utility world. These goods, electricity, water, are I think basic human rights at this point, certainly necessities, and they need to be kept affordable. They are a public good, whether the utility is private or public. We call them public utilities, and they're also key to our climate future. We all understand, I think, having seen Texas, the importance of our utilities as increasingly severe weather events come our way, and as we shift to more and more of our energy use to our electricity utilities. So it's about fairness. It's about making an equitable transition to clean energy and making sure that the cost causer pays. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Berry. And there are no co-sponsors on this bill, but we will go to questions first for Representative Berry. So give me a minute. There's a little bit of delay when people on the committee raise their hand. And just as a reminder to people who maybe have been promoted to participant, it's only committee members who can ask questions during public hearings. And I see Representative Grochowski with her hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Berry, for bringing this bill back. I haven't had time to do a compare and contrast, but I'm curious, is this language we're looking at the final language that the committee reported out last session?
Yes, it is. Thank you for that question.
Are there other questions from the committee? Representative Kessler. Raising your hand both virtually and personally doesn't mean you get to speak twice. Representative Kessler.
Can everybody hear me okay? Great. I just on the same note, could you please tell me what the LD was from last session?
I should have that close at hand, and I'm terrible with LD numbers, but thank you for the question anyway. I want to say it was 1881, and maybe our analyst can, well, she wasn't with us at the time, but I think it was 1881. I'll double check.
Thank you. And I must say, Representative Berry, it's actually frightening that you would remember the number of the bill. Is there anybody else on the committee who wishes to ask a question? Seeing none, we're now going to go to proponents. And the first person I'll recognize is Deb Hart from the Dirigo Electric Cooperative, speaking in favor of the bill.
Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, and members of the Utilities Committee. My name is Deborah Hart. I'm a resident of Manchester, Maine, and I own Hart Public Policy, and I'm speaking to you in support of this bill today. I have my client, the Dirigo Electric Cooperative Company. The purpose of LD 251 mimics a similar bill introduced in the last session, LD 1881. Representative Barry was correct. I had to look that up. I didn't have that at my fingertips this morning. Like that bill, it seeks to have the PUC and the OPA report annually to the Utilities Committee on how it assesses the various public utilities between investor-owned utilities and consumer-owned utilities for the work these agencies provide to each category of utility. It would seem to make sense to have the utilities that are the cost drivers to bear the brunt of those regulatory costs. The COU electric utilities do not expend a lot of time and money at the commission in rate cases or other hearings. So again, it would seem reasonable that the expenses that are incurred should be allocated and recovered from those utilities that are causing those costs. I did talk to my clients on our weekly conference call this morning, and I asked about the time that they had spent at the PUC recently. And really, there was not a lot. One of the largest utilities went back to 2016. One of my smallest utilities had a few non-controversial, non-contested conservation assessment tariffs in 2020. And then another one of the larger utilities was a bit more active, but that was as a result of the interconnection to NB Power. So that's what I got off the bat. Again, we do support this bill. We supported it last year. We think that it makes a lot of sense. I'd be happy to answer any questions or get you any more information that you might need from the consumer-owned utilities that I represent.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee for Ms. Hart? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go on to opponents, and I will recognize Benjamin Sanborn of the Telecommunications Association of Maine. Sanborn.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, members of the committee. My name is Ben Sanborn. I am the Executive Director and Counsel for Telecommunications Association of Maine. We are in opposition to a portion of this legislation. Really what our focus is on the filing fee issue. And Representative Barry raised a number of situations and a number of types of proceedings that occur that can cause the commission to have additional expenses. However, within the communication space, a lot of what we see are recapitalization proceedings. When you're talking about a reorganization, the reorganization is, as defined in statute, is not just one company takes over another company. In the case of a provider of last resort, which is the type of utility that all of TAM's members are, you have a threshold of if you own or are owned by 25% ownership of an affiliate, then that is a reorganization. And similarly, if there is a significant impact on your management by an entity that has 3% ownership stake in your utility, then that can qualify as a reorganization. And the real world scenario here is that a company may invest in an affiliate, for example, a broadband affiliate. And in that circumstance, there may be technically a reorganization, but realistically, what you're looking at is a capitalization of resources to attempt to buy more fiber so that you can expand more fiber. And these tend not to be significant proceedings in front of the commission in terms of requiring additional outside consultants, which is really what filing fees go to. And so in those circumstances, having an upfront filing fee, understanding that it can be waived and that there are procedures to go through that, can be a deterrent for attracting an investor for that sort of recapitalization. And so our only concern with the way in which this is drafted is it creates a fairly high number upfront for a investor who may be looking to assist a provider of last resort and their broadband affiliate in getting more capital in order to invest in rural areas. And that having a cap or having some clearer connection before assessing a filing fee to what the actual activity is going to be at the commission seems to be a little more appropriate. I note that the language in the legislation has two sort of distinct areas, one where it may be assessed and one where the commission believes that there will be significant expenses or that there will be a change of ownership, I believe, in which case it shall be assessed. And our suggestion would be maybe for the ones where it may be assessed, keep some sort of a cap where if the commission determines that there's not going to be a significant cost, instead of having to go through a waiver process, have that stay at a low level first. And then only if there's going to be a change of ownership, have this sort of higher cap amount. So with that, I have submitted written testimony and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Sanborn, Representative Grochowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sanborn, for the testimony. I'm looking at your testimony. It sounded like you had a problem with one portion of the bill, but in your testimony, you, instead of presenting a possible amendment, which I think you were sort of working out there in your spoken testimony, you just said, I urge this committee to vote ought not to pass. If you're able to come back with an actual proposed amendment, I would be interested in considering that, but I'm hopeful that we can do better than ought not to pass.
Thank you, Representative. I will certainly work on that. This was mostly a timing issue and me having some difficulties with the filing of the testimony to begin with, so it was a little rushed. But yes, I'll be happy to work on some language and bring that back for the work session.
Thank you. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sanborn, question I have is, did you present similar testimony last year for the bill that this is crafted after? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I will have to check. I am not 100% sure if we did or did not file it last session. So I will look into it and I'll have an answer by the work session.
Other questions for Mr. Sanborn? Seeing none, thank you very much. And
thank you.
In the category, no matter how much you prepare for these virtual meetings, I now have a cat who wants to come in and a dog who needs to go out. So I'm going to turn it over for a moment to Senator Vitelli to take over as chair from the meeting. And we are at the point of having Mr. Parent come up and testify, Eloise, neither for nor against.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. This is very exciting. I'm glad your dogs and cats are keeping you busy. So we'll do my best to fill in here with David Parent from Maine Water Utilities Association, speaking neither for nor against. David?
Good morning.
You're there.
Let me find my testimony. Here we go. Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, Senator Vitelli, and members of the committee. My name is David Parent. I'm the superintendent of the Sanford Water District, and I'm providing testimony neither for nor against on behalf of the Maine Water Utilities Association. I have submitted written testimony and I ask that you please read it because I'll be summarizing significantly. Our primary message to you today is that water utilities are different than the other regulated sectors, and it makes sense not to paint us with the same broad regulatory brush. First off, there's many more of us. There's 152 regulated water utilities versus 12 electric, 18 telecoms, 4 gas, and 1 water carrier, according to the report that the PUC submitted to the legislature. Secondly, we are much smaller. Our individual revenues are a small fraction of those of most other individual revenues of utilities in other regulated sectors. Water utilities have seen major volatility in both the PUC and OPA assessments over the past couple of years. Assessments have been unpredictable, and they do impact budgets when they're unpredictable. This bill, one of our concerns with this bill is that it would separate public and private utilities, creating 2 smaller pools upon which assessments are calculated. Now, by making the pools smaller, we worry that this would actually increase rather than decrease the volatility of those assessments. So we would like the committee to consider amending this bill to add a mechanism that would stabilize these assessments and decrease the budget impacts. Perhaps using a 3-year rolling average or implementing some kind of a reserve fund. To limit budget impacts, you could allow a water utility the option of paying an increase above a reasonable amount in their next budgeted year. Or you could invoice based on the previous year's numbers and let water utilities know what the invoice is going to be ahead of their budget year so they can account for it in their budgeting process. We would like the opportunity to discuss these options at the work session if the committee is willing to entertain them. And I was very happy to hear Representative Berry say that he is interested in doing just that. So we would love to go through these with you if you want to hear about them. The association also feels that the fees and penalties should reflect cost and intended level of deterrence. We don't think they should be simply raised by the CPI as this bill calls for. And you may have different situations in the other regulated sectors, but I don't think that's the case with water. We've also included a suggestion on the reorganization fees in there. We didn't put a whole lot of detail, but quite honestly, the discussion was a lot like the gentleman who spoke before me, Ben Sanborn. I think I wrote his name down. I don't know Ben, but it was the same sort of things that perhaps that can be structured to more closely represent the actual cost of the reorganization rather than just a percentage. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Parent. The members of the committee have questions. I see a hand up for Representative Cuddy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Parent. So do I understand, first off, I beg your indulgence. I am new to the committee, so all the different utilities are a little new to me. It sounds to me, and I just want to make sure that I understand your point correctly, that a water utility would have budgeted for the coming year. They receive the assessment. The assessment can be highly variable.
Yes.
And so you may have budgeted for an assessment of X number of dollars and receive one significantly higher than that. And so is that what creates the budget issue you're talking about?
That's exactly it. So I can only speak for Sanford's numbers because those are the ones I have in front of me. 2018, the OPA assessment for us was about $400, $399. 2019, it was $2,452, a 514% increase. 2020 was actually good news in the other direction. It was $481, an 80% reduction. PUC hasn't been quite as bad, but still has been significant increases. In 2018 to 2019, we saw a 6% increase. 2019 to 2020, a 15% increase. And especially for smaller utilities that run on a very tight budget, when you impact their budget, where the money has to come out of is their capital budget. And that's infrastructure replacement and maintenance. And they need the predictability. If they're not going to have the money to do what they need to do, they need to do a rate increase. We're lucky enough that we're able to absorb most of these increases in Sanford. It has not impacted our infrastructure budget. Not the case for several other utilities that were upset about this. So our primary concern is the volatility of the assessments and also on the fees and penalties. We don't think those should just keep going up if they're not needed to cover costs or to cause further deterrence in the water sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Parent. Please say hello to your mayor for me next time you see her.
Oh, I will. That's right. She just came back from up there.
Other members of the committee have questions for Mr. Parent? Seeing none, I thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We will now move on to hear from Garrett Corbin from the PUC, neither for nor against. Where's Garrett? There he is. Good morning.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me this week? It's a little better than last week. Okay, great. Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Senator Vitelli, Representative Berry, honorable members of the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Garrett Corbin. I'm testifying neither for nor against LD 251, an act regarding public utility assessments, fees, and penalties on behalf of the Maine Public Utilities Commission. This legislation requires the Commission to apportion the assessments it establishes for utilities in accordance with the share of the Commission's resources devoted to matters related to consumer-owned utilities and the share devoted to those of investor-owned utilities, as we've discussed this morning. Under LD 251, the Commission would include in its annual report information regarding the portion of our resources devoted to COUs and the portion devoted to IOUs, as well as expenses per dollar of intrastate gross operating revenue for investor-owned IOU and consumer-owned COU utilities. Our written testimony explains a little bit more about what the bill will do, but in the interest of time, I'm going to just skip forward to the extra context that we thought would be helpful to explain how the Commission currently apportions assessments on regulated utilities, focusing on the differences between electric and water utilities, as well as some recommendations for possible clarifications to the legislation. With respect to assessments, the Commission currently apportions those first by utility industry sector, so electric, water, natural gas, based on resources devoted to matters in that sector, phone as well, and second to each utility within a sector based on annual revenue. So the Commission's costs associated with electric utility matters, for example, are assigned to the electric industry sector, while costs associated with the water utility matters are assigned to the water industry. Our written testimony also includes a chart showing the percentage breakdown of the Commission costs assigned to each industry for 2020. And then, and so that just shows that breakdown. Following the allocation by sector, the Commission next allocates costs within the sector by revenue. That leaves utilities with larger revenues paying a higher share of the costs. So for example, the chart in our written testimony reflects that assessments made to the electricity industry on May 1st, 2020 resulted in 96% of the electric industry assessments being paid by the two investor-owned utilities, T&D utilities, while 4% is paid by the consumer-owned T&D electric utilities. For water utilities, that IOU COU breakdown is very different. For 2020, 13% of the total assessment was paid for by the investor-owned utilities and 87% by the consumer-owned utilities, as detailed in the table that's also in that written testimony. Again, assessments are allocated by revenue, and since the COUs have more total revenue than the IOUs, the COUs pay more of the total cost. So under the provisions of LD 251, consumer-owned water utilities would likely see assessments increase as the COUs file more cases with the Commission than IOUs, again in the water sector, leaving more cost apportioned to these COUs. Given the likelihood of increased assessments for small water utilities, the committee may want to consider capping year-over-year increases to reduce impact on these utilities. The Commission would also respectfully suggest that a full year of cost data be compiled before implementation. That would leave the first assessments reflecting cost apportion to COUs and IOUs occurring in May of 2022. Just a couple more points. The filing fees, the bill amends the filing fee provision, as has been noted, to allow a fee up to 0.05% of the estimated value of the corporation or entity resulting from the reorg. That terminology is unclear. The committee might consider tying the value to purchase price or transaction value as determined by the Commission. And also the bill states that the Commission may order a filing fee, except that if the reorganization would result in the transfer of ownership of the utility or its parents, the Commission shall order that a filing fee be paid. And the Commission just wanted to call to your attention that we'd assume that any filing fee amount that's not used to process the reorganization application would be returned, and that no filing fee would be required if there's no fee needed to process the application, but we would request that that provision be clarified just so everyone's on the same page there. Finally, the Commission would suggest that in lieu of having us propose legislation in future legislative sessions, moving forward, the Commission might rather include in its annual report calculation of all fees and penalties compounded by CPI, Consumer Price Index, since enactment. Based on information provided, just the commission finally just notes that there might really just be immaterial changes to the COU T&D assessments. And so the commission questions, especially in the electric industry, so just questioning whether the additional significant time for internal staff tracking is justified. And of course, we'd be continued to happy to provide any additional information that would be of assistance to your committee.
Great. Thank you, Senator Vitelli, for pinch hitting while I resolve the animal crisis. I just ask if there are any questions from the committee for Mr. Corbin. Representative Grochowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Corbin, for being here. I really like your green background on your submitted testimony. It reminds me of the good old days of paper. My question, I seem to recall from 2 years ago that, and I think you were alluding to this, that the PUC doesn't currently track exactly specifically within an industry or a sector, if it's IOUs or COUs or what project it's dealing with. Seemed to be that your internal tracking was, as I recall, okay, we're working on electric utilities, but you weren't keeping track of specifically which one. Maybe you can refresh my memory on that. And relatedly, I'm looking at the bill summary. I don't know if you have it handy, but number 3 was reporting annually about the tracking of resources related to investor-owned utilities and resources related to concerned utilities. So were you just saying that that's something that you don't think is worth tracking within the electric industry? Was I hearing that correctly? Thank you.
You know, whether or not, thank you, Representative Grochowski, for the question. You can hear me, right? Yeah. Whether or not it's worth tracking is certainly, you know, in your purview. We did just want to highlight the fact that it's would not be an insignificant burden. You know, it's essentially just a more detailed, much more detailed level of tracking. And correct, we do not currently, the first part of your question, we don't currently break down by, you know, or flag our staff time on whether or not the utility is on the ownership basis of the utility, consumer or investor. It's again, it's broken down by sector and then by revenue within that sector. And I think there's a view, I think it's fair to say that there's a view within the commission that evens out over time, that it seemed to have been a workable balance in the past. But of course, you know, if there's concerns over whether or not that is fair, we're, as I noted at the end, you know, we're happy to continue conversations about what a fair way to do this would be, if that's helpful.
Are there other questions? Representative Grochowski, did you want to follow up?
Yes, please. Thank you. Would it be possible to look into your time tracking system? I know that in my job, I literally track by the minute each client that I'm working for, and it's just a matter of, you know, clicking that checkbox. And so if you're already selecting, I'm working for an electric utility right now, is it harder to select specifically I'm looking at CMP or specifically I'm looking at EMEC? I don't want to like micromanage the PUC, but it just seems hard for me to fathom how most of us are used to tracking our time in this way, but it sounds like this is a challenge. Would it be possible to look into your HR time tracking system and see if it's just a matter of simply reprogramming that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a technical capacity to do it. Just as someone who has been in that world personally, there is a level of time that needs to be devoted to that, you know, minute by minute tracking. It takes effort, as you probably know, in itself, and so there's certainly, you know, general tracking within the commission, and yeah, I can get back to you with more detail about our capacity to transition to that. I don't, just to be clear, I don't think that we are contending that we could not do that transition. It's just a question about the, on balance, the amount of additional time it will take to do that.
Representative Grahowski, do you have any follow-up? You're all set. Other members of the committee who wish to ask questions of Mr. Corbin, Representative Barry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Corbin, thank you for your testimony. Just maybe as a follow-up for the work session, I would be very interested in understanding, how someone like the administrative director, or you for that matter, who work across multiple jurisdictions do, keep track of your time. So if you can give us a little more, concrete visibility into that, how you, what box you check, what kind of a time clock system you have, that would be great. So just to echo Representative Grahowski there, but I think another thing for the work session would be helpful to understand, which is, we've looked at this bill before, obviously, came forward in the last session. Could the PUC provide for us, this year, we could wait a little. Could you provide for us that update on fees and penalties, if they were adjusted to inflation, where they would be now, that's contemplated in the bill, so that we could consider taking action on those items now, rather than waiting for the next annual report, reading that, and then contemplating action in a future legislature.
Yeah, that's certainly, thanks, Representative Barry. That is all fair, and we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the committee for for Mr. Corbin? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll now go on to others who wish to testify neither for nor against. The chair will recognize Barry Hobbins, the public advocate. Barry? Barry? We'll give him a minute. I'm sure he's trying to get on. And in the meantime,
I'm fine. Thank you.
Great. Good.
I apologize. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony, which I have in writing on LD 251. And I just wanted to go through a little bit about this information. As you know, the last legislative session discussed a similar bill, which has been referenced as LD 1881. Interestingly enough, the research that we did on the last filing and the last bill submission, we found that there was a concern, especially with the IOUs and COUs with respect to water companies. And as a result of that testimony, our office voluntarily began to separate out the commercial water companies versus the commercial consumer water companies. And that information is the only information, even though we weren't legally obligated because the bill did not pass, we have been using and offsetting that. To give you some idea of staffing hours, we basically have, just like I did when I was a lawyer, we keep track of the staff's hourly time. We do an hourly time analysis, and that's how we come up with a percentage of what the assessments will be. In our office, the electric companies are 73% of staff time goes to electric, 11% goes to telephone, 18% goes to gas, and 6% of the hourly time, as per our analysis, goes to water. My testimony will explain many things, but please understand is that we have no objection whatsoever to collecting and reporting the information referenced in this bill. I would suggest, though, and when you're looking, don't look at the original bill. Look at the amendment of the committee, which is very thorough and made some vetting changes that I think make the bill a stronger bill. As I mentioned before, we don't track except for water for our fiscal year assessments of 2021. And essentially, any implementation would need to reflect a start date for collection. The fiscal year for the OPA is July 1st to June 30th, with an annual report due to the legislature and to the governor on September 1st. So clarification as the beginning of the tracking, this information would need to be looked at and clearly stated. We have no issue with the rules issue because, quite frankly, the OPA does not issue rules. So any reference to its possible issuance of a rule should be deleted from the bill. Again, we do not have any objections. We would like to work with the committee. I think there is, you'll be surprised, and we were, with the split that we estimated from the previous work was 80% of the total number of hours and expenditures would be from the IOUs and 20% from the COUs for water districts, and their assessments will reflect that. Unfortunately, there was another issue with the mechanism of keeping track that we found in looking at the other bill when it was presented to the legislature, and that was what precipitated our looking to assess based upon percentages such as that. So there's basically, ironically, a reduction in the consumer water districts, and I think they'll find that in their assessments and fees. And also,
We're at the 3 minutes, Barry.
Thank you very much. Any questions at all, I'll be more than happy to answer. My testimony goes into further detail. Thank you.
Are there questions for the public advocate from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to working with you in the work session.
And Ben, I believe that concludes the people who wish to testify on that bill. Is that correct, Ben?
That's what I have.
What's that?
That's what I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so I'll declare the public hearing on this bill closed. We'll now go on to our second bill for the morning. It's LD 285, an act to protect utility consumers from investor risk for costs incurred due to disaster. And is again presented by our co-chair on our committee, Representative Seth Berry. Representative Berry.
Thank you very much, Senator Lawrence. Members of the committee, I am still Seth Berry, and I am now presenting LD 285, which is an act to protect utility customers from investor risk for costs incurred due to a disaster. The bill is quite short, but the subject matter that it raises is quite complex. This really goes to the heart of the regulated utility business model. And so I'm going to take a little time on it just to kick us off, and hope it's the beginning of a robust discussion about our utility business models in general. As you know, there are two types of utilities in Maine, and in Title 35A, which is our special section of statute. One business model is investor-owned, the other is consumer-owned. And in theory, each business model has its advantages. One consideration when we think about the advantages of each is risk. The theory often goes that an investor-owned utility puts some of the risk onto shareholders. That risk is borne by shareholders, and that's a benefit. In return for shouldering risk, the shareholders benefit from what's called the revenue requirement, which is used in rate setting. And this revenue requirement, which our PUC determines, includes all of the costs to the shareholders, including their corporate taxes, as well as a built-in return on equity or ROE on capital investment to provide for a profit. So that's the benefit to the shareholders, and again, the idea is that the consumers benefit because risk is shouldered by those shareholders. In a consumer-owned utility, in contrast, we bear the risk as customers, as ratepayers, goes the theory, and in return, we don't have to pay extra for those shareholder profits or the corporate taxes that I mentioned. Those are not part of our rates. It cuts the cost of capital investment roughly in half, and that reduces rates in the consumer and utilities. Obviously, these differences matter enormously. They are directly related to the rates that we pay. So just to put a finer point on this, looking at main utilities, main transmission and distribution utilities, as of January of this year, the delivery rates in the IOU world are very, very different from the delivery rates in the COU world in Maine. Our investor-owned utilities charge 58% more for what they do, the delivery of each kilowatt hour, 58% more per kilowatt hour than the consumer-owned utilities of Maine charge. Specifically, the average per kilowatt hour is 9.5 cents. And for the consumer-owned utilities, it is only 6.0 cents. So the question needs to be asked, why are most of us paying 58% more? And in return, by the way, based on the IOUs that report reliability to the EIA and the Energy Information Agency of the United States, we're getting the worst reliability in the nation from those investor-owned utilities. My belief is that there are several reasons, but one of those is that our theory of risk is not working. It is broken. In practice, the IOU ratepayers are actually the backstop, not the investors. So the risk is not being shared. And this bill is one small step to correct that imbalance. The bill would simply require that if investors own a utility, and if that utility is damaged by a storm, if its facilities are damaged in a storm, the cost of repair should fall to investors. So let's talk about just a different scenario altogether to understand what that means. Imagine that the grocery store that you go to is damaged by a sudden tornado. Do you, as the customer, pay to fix it, or does the store owner pay to fix the damage to their store? Now imagine instead that you own shares in that store. You're both a customer and an owner. The same tornado hits. Do you pay? Of course you do. You pay in direct proportion to your ownership stake. That's how it works in the real world of business. If you own it, it's your job to take care of it. You can have insurance, you can have federal assistance, but otherwise you're responsible. Now, because we don't follow this logic in the utility world at present, it creates problems. When an IOU is able to shift the cost to ratepayers, not investors, there's less incentive to proactively plan, to maintain, and to manage the grid against damages and outages, to prevent those outages to begin with. This is happening in Maine today. Our theory of risk is broken, and we're paying more than we should, 58% more, as I mentioned, and getting worst in-class performance. Maine, not only based on our IOUs, has the 11th highest electricity delivery rates in the nation, but also the worst outages in the nation. In 2017 and again in 2019, we had the worst reliability. And I provide some information about that in my testimony. The impact of climate change is going to be making this worse. Destructive natural events are becoming more frequent. We all saw what happened in Texas last week. We all remember October 30th, 2017 in Maine, when power was out for 2 weeks for many Mainers. Seniors were blocked in their driveways, unable to access emergency services. Schools were closed for a week in some areas. The failure to harden the grid has an impact. Now, Now, the cost to CMP because of that storm, some of which were unavoidable. I want to be clear. You can harden the grid and still incur a lot of cost, but some of the costs were avoidable. The total expenses to respond, to bring in out-of-state crews, to pay for their meals, their lodging, their overtime, their equipment, the total costs were about $77 million, as I recall. And I also recall that CMP's shareholders were only required to pay about $3 million. I want to ask the PUC to correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 77 in total, and the shareholders paid about $3 million. Customers were in effect required to pay off the rest. There was a little bit of a trade-off because there was a federal tax cut that came into play that reduced the corporate taxes of the utility. That normally would have reduced our rates, because remember, we pay those corporate taxes. So typically that should have gone into a rate reduction. Instead, it was used to cover the utilities costs. In essence, we paid for all the costs except for the first $3 million or so. It's been added to our monthly bills, and again, I believe that much of this was unavoidable. I think that's demonstrably true. Utilities can't control Mother Nature, and it is a fair point that CMP and Versant will make today, I'm sure, that we have a lot of trees in the state. But let's recall that New Hampshire, which is the secondly most forested state, does not have the second worst reliability. Let's recall that Florida and all of the Gulf Coast have multiple hurricanes each year. And let's recall that Nebraska, which has the best reliability in the nation and some of the lowest rates, has about 50 tornadoes per year. I provide a chart of tornadoes, the tornado history in Nebraska, in my testimony. Again, Nebraska, if you don't know it already, is the only state where all utilities are consumer owned, but 49 states have at least some consumer owned utilities. There's a lot that Maine utilities can do to improve our reliability. I want to talk about a few of those things today. It's important that we understand this on this committee. Investment in the low voltage distribution networks that run down our side roads and streets it doesn't pay as much as high voltage transmission, but it can be profitable, and all of it needs to be done in a smart, intelligent, and low cost way to the extent possible. Hardening the grid can mean a number of things. It can be better vegetation management in some areas. It can be installing taller and stouter poles so that more trees and branches fall under the wires. It means regularly inspecting lines and repairing weak spots. It means installing sectionalizers and reclosers to limit the extent of an outage. It means installing insulated tree wire that doesn't short when it's touched by a drooping branch. Or better yet, using Hendrix wire or spacer wire, which is far stouter, also insulated, but suspended from a spacer cable, which doesn't short out and can often sustain the weight of an entire tree. Hendrix wire is a lot more costly, but again, there's a return on that investment, and it can dramatically reduce outages and much of the need for tree trimming as well. I provide more about that in the appendix to my testimony. So why does this matter? It's not just about cost. Let's remember too that it's often the most vulnerable among us who are hardest hit by widespread, long-lasting, severe outages. This is not just financial. It can be a matter of life and limb. Last week in Texas, as we all saw, more than 30 people died due to the outages there. That's the number we know of today. Maine has the worst outages in the nation now, but more severe weather is coming. So we need to get to work to reinforce our utility system. And that is the job of utilities. But our job is important too. It's perhaps a little more simple. If we want utilities to perform better, then we need to pay for success. We should not be paying for failure. And that's what the bill is really about. I want to be clear, I'm not referring to performance-based rate making. We talked about that last year. There was a bill that we considered and unanimously rejected in the 129th legislature. Performance-based rate making is typically used to increase complexity, increase incentives, more carrots to do what should already be done. And over the years, it has inevitably resulted in increased profits at the expense of ratepayers. I'm still looking for an expert to tell me where performance-based rate making has been done and has been a clear and net success. I haven't found a good answer to that yet. So what I'm proposing is not more carrots, but simply that we stop asking ratepayers to bear almost all the risk and shareholders to bear almost none, and still make a consistent, predictable profit. Now, it may be said today that this bill is not constitutional, that it might be a taking. And I want to ask you, if that is the case, then are we, is this the business model that makes sense for us? Is this what we should continue to do? Because last time I checked, the definition of madness was continuing to do the same thing again and again and having it not work. It may be said that we need to continue the flow of capital. We need to keep the credit rating high of the utilities. And so we can't do anything that might harm their predictable profits. Then we might have less access to capital. I think that's circular thinking. It keeps the ratepayers of Maine on the hamster wheel, and it is thinking that's really brought to us by the IOU industry. An important note here is that our not-for-profit consumer-owned utilities, such as the Deergo Electric members we heard from earlier, but also the water folks, do qualify for assistance from FEMA, from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, when a natural disaster is declared. Only the consumer-owned utilities typically qualify for the FEMA assistance. So one example, after Superstorm Sandy, the not-for-profit utility on Long Island in New York was given $878 million. So getting close to $1 billion there by FEMA to help pay the cost of rebuilding the grid. And obviously that's a major assistance to ratepayers. Let me skip on a little bit, but just quickly, I encourage you to learn about Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park, Florida decided they gave up on trying to pay for utility storm response and not getting good results. They created their own consumer-owned utility. They've buried all the lines. They have no outages now, and the rates are down lower than in the neighboring utility, which they took over. The question before us is whether we can simply ask the utilities to pay for those costs. But I think, again, we need to consider whether the business model is working if that is not possible. There's no question that we are going to make a big transition. There's going to need to be a lot of investment in the grid in the next generation, starting now. And it's not just a question of cost, it's also a question of equity. As I mentioned earlier, lower income Mainers have a very high burden for energy costs in general. And they also tend to be the most vulnerable in a natural disaster. They may depend on oxygen machines. They may not be able to afford a home generator. They may live in crowded housing with no alternative heat source. And of course, I mentioned the 30 or more who died in Texas recently. I don't think those were wealthy and privileged individuals for the most part. We're still learning their stories. It also has an impact on business. Outages have a real cost to businesses like Texas Instruments, where when production stops abruptly because of an outage, and this happens often, hundreds of thousands of dollars in product are rendered unusable. That value is forever lost. Similarly, dairy farms who need to store their milk and have an outage can often see significant spoilage as well. In some cases, a generator is affordable. In other cases, certainly for Texas Instruments in South Portland, that would have to be a pretty expensive investment. So we need to hold our private utilities a little more accountable and prevent our economy from shutting down and customer safety from being jeopardized when the wind blows. I think it's time that we no longer require the captive customers of investor-owned utilities to pay the price for the risks associated with severe weather. I will end there. Thank you for your time and happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Berry. Are there any questions from the committee for Representative Berry? Representative Grochowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Berry, for bringing forward this compelling thought. I don't know if it's a thought experiment. I think it's beyond that at this point. I appreciate that. I'm just curious. I've been sitting here racking my brain trying to think of what risk the utilities do bear to get the, and maybe you can remind us what general percent of return they get, because it seems like we all pretty much pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, can they distribute those costs amongst those of us that do? I'm just curious if you have any sense of if there's any risk at all to investing in an electric utility.
Thank you, Representative Grochowski. And the short answer is there is very little risk, and it does go back often in rate making to that that counter argument that I mentioned, that if we create risk, then we will jeopardize the credit rating of the investor-owned utility, and that could have the impact of raising rates. So it's a catch-22 that keeps the customers of utilities like CMP or Versant on the hamster wheel of profit. The ROE, return on equity that I mentioned for capital investment is built into U.S. constitutional jurisprudence in the Hope and Bluefield decisions of the 1920s and 1940s. We have to pay, constitutionally must pay for a very healthy rate of return for capital investment. Performance-based rate making can only add to that. We cannot go lower than the profit they're already making. So there's very little we can do with performance-based rate making. What we need to do is have a spine and instead simply say we're not going to pay when failures occur. Or if you won't go along with that, we'll change the business model. I can get back to you on ROE generally, but it's typically in the vicinity of 9% for distribution infrastructure, 12 to 13% historically for transmission infrastructure, and the utilities generally do a little better than that if you average it out over the years in their actual profits.
Thank you very much, Representative Wood.
I'm just trying to understand something that you said, Representative Berry, about FEMA, and that, if I understood you right, consumer-owned utilities are eligible for FEMA, but investor-owned are not. And I noticed that you mentioned FEMA, it's in the bill. So I'm just trying to understand that relationship.
Yes, thank you for that question, Representative Wood. And it is a very important distinction. Typically, and we see this not just with natural disasters, but also with disasters such as the pandemic, where municipal and state and tribal and some nonprofit entities are able to benefit from federal emergency assistance.
Okay.
For perhaps understandable reasons, the federal government has been historically reluctant to give disaster assistance to for-profit enterprises. Although, of course, as we saw in the CARES Act, there was money there, but it comes in a different form. And typically with natural disasters, FEMA assistance is really just there for the not-for-profits, the municipal, governmental, and consumer-owned, including consumer-owned utility entities.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
And yeah, the bill references that. I'm honestly not sure it needs to, but thank you for flagging that. I think the point is very important.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions from the committee for Representative Berry? Yes, Representative Cuddy, thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. So Representative Berry, looking at the the text of the bill, it talks about costs incurred as a result of a disaster as defined by a particular section of statute. I was looking at a Bangor Daily News story from last June, where after a couple of major storms, Versant had a rate increase of a little over $3 a month for the average customer. CMP had a rate increase of about $2.50 for the average customer per month. And these were blamed on two major storms and the outages those caused during that prior year. I don't know the section of statute that's referenced. I don't know if you do either, but would those, a regular storm that caused these outages, would that be covered by this?
Thank you, Representative Cuddy, for that great question. I think generally speaking, the bill would only apply, as you note, from major storm events. And we actually keep track of major storm events or major event days in the utility world pretty carefully. It's used for reporting reliability. Sadie, Safey, and Katie, which we'll perhaps get into later, different ways of looking at reliability are tracked according to major event days. I think it's important to draw the line somewhere, and this seems to me a logical place to do it. Consumer-led utilities are not eligible for federal assistance, from a smaller storm. And I think that the insanity, if you will, of our current approach to sharing the costs or not sharing them is really highlighted when a consumer-led utility, which already has 58% lower rates, is, by the way, allowed to qualify for federal assistance, and the investor-owned utility just turns to the ratepayers to shoulder that cost as well as everything else. I hope that helps to answer the question, and thank you.
It does. Thank you.
Well said, Representative Cuddy. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Berry, for your testimony. Just one question to kind of close the loop on your analogy of the supermarket versus the consumer-owned utility. Would you agree that in one way or another, eventually the customer pays the bill? If the investors have to make up the payment of rebuilding that store, for instance, eventually those buying their milk in there are going to pay that for that repair. Likewise, would you also agree that Maine taxpayers may feel that it's unfair that a utility in New York receives FEMA monies to make their repairs, while taxpayers in Maine have to help contribute to eventually pay for that, versus our system of the ratepayers being held accountable for the products that they purchase through future costs. So I'm just, you make a distinction between whether our utilities, the consumer-owned utilities, can access FEMA money, but eventually we pay one way or another, the consumer or the taxpayer. I guess I'd ask you just to address that, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Foster. There's certainly differences between the two worlds, and I think the difference in the grocery store example, the primary difference is that we get to choose which grocery store we go to, and if Shaw's is charging more for pineapples than Hannaford is, I might go to Hannaford instead. So. The problem in the world that we all live in on this committee is we regulate monopolies. I can't go, with Madison or Holton or Kennebunk Light and Power or Eastern Maine Electric as my provider to try to access that 58% lower rate. I pay 58% more for an investor-owned utility, and I get worse reliability for it. And by the way, I have to pay when they incur costs due to storms. So that to me is a broken system. And that's what I think we're trying to get at. You know, it is, it's certainly true that we help to pay for, you know, storm response in Long Island. That's the reality. We're not going to change federal law. I'd like to, you know, have some of that money coming back to us here in Maine as well. So to me, that's one more reason to either pass this bill or change the business model altogether.
Any follow-up questions, Representative Foster?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Representative Berry? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. So we are at the bewitching hour of just about 10:30, and this is the time when we take a break. So I'm going to suggest we do it now. This is a time to give our clerk, Ben Freck, and our analyst, Deirdre Snyder, to catch up on some of the work that has been generated while we have been in hearings. So we will be back on at 10:45. I would ask members to please mute themselves and turn off their video. Thank you. Okay, I'll begin welcoming members back to the committee. When I see at least 7 back live, we will start the hearing up again. I see 3 of us now, 4. So just as a reminder to people in the audience and listening in, this Zoom technology is at a different level of complication for us as legislators. We will be taking a break at 12:30 today, and I doubt if we're going to go all that way. And during all our hearings and work sessions, we're going to be taking a break at 10:15, 12:30, and a similar time in the afternoon. Normally, during the legislative process, legislators will spend virtually all their time in meetings, face-to-face meetings. We now find we're spending 6, sometimes 8 hours a day on Zoom meetings. And just the physical strain on people's eyes, on having to be on technology that much. Both Representative Berry and I want to schedule breaks where members can every hour and a half or 2 hours just stare at something else other than a computer to give their eyes a rest. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people back, and we're ready to go back to our hearing on LD 285. And I will bring up my list, but I believe the next person to speak is James Cody from Versant Power, who will be speaking against this legislation. James.
Good morning, Senator Lawrence and Chairman Berry and members of the committee. Nice to be with you this morning. I am James Cody of Bernstein Shore, and I'm here today on behalf of Versant Power to testify respectfully in opposition to LD 285. I want to first point out that Versant Power is committed to be there for their customers, our customers, in the unfortunate circumstance where a disaster confronts the state of Maine. We know we are a vital part of the lives and the health and the economic well-being of people in the state of Maine. And so we are committed to being there in these types of disasters. I've submitted my testimony, so I won't necessarily read all the way through it, but I will just make a couple of points. Like all electric utilities, Versant Power continuously seeks the best possible balance between investment in infrastructure and solutions that increase grid resiliency and reliability, and the impacts that those investments will have on our customers' electricity bills. We do this based on the signals that we receive from policymakers and regulators about where the state's priorities are, and the decisions then are vigorously and appropriately reviewed by the Public Utility Commission as well as other regulators. We believe that in the event of a natural disaster, whether it's natural or man-made, a utility's reasonable disaster response would be considered a prudently incurred cost by state standards or federal FERC standards. We also know that all of these costs are thoroughly reviewed and vetted in the Public Utilities Commission process, in their rate-making processes, before they are ever approved for recovery and rates. The current system, the current standards allow for responsible anticipation of these scenarios under the thorough review of regulators without having to charge customers in advance for risks that may or may not ever occur. And we think that that's important to consider as you think through this legislation. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and importantly, and I think unfortunately it was a byproduct of the events in Texas, was that yesterday FERC announced that it will be opening a proceeding that will examine electric reliability in the face of climate change, which we think will likely have a nexus with some of the issues that LD 285 seeks to bring forward. So we look forward to seeing what that docket produces. I have not seen all of the details, but there is an announcement on the FERC website along those lines. So for those reasons and others as outlined in the testimony, we would respectfully urge you to oppose this legislation, but we'd be more than happy to answer questions and provide any information that you need for the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Are there any questions from the committee? I'm going to give it a second till I see virtual hands raised. I don't see any hands raised, so thank you very much. We'll now go on to testimony, neither for nor against, and we'll hear, I'm sorry, Representative Berry, yes? You have a question for Mr. Cody?
I just wanted to check if Ms. Newman from CMP wanted to jump in the against
Yes.
category before we go
Yep,
on.
there are two additional people on.
Got it.
I was told that Ms. Newman is neither for nor against. Is that true, Kathleen? Oh, you are against.
Opposition to this one, yeah.
Okay. Then we'll continue with opposition and go to Kathleen Newman from Central Maine Power.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. I appreciate that. Sorry if I mixed it up when I was submitting my testimony this morning. Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, members of the committee, I'm Kathleen Newman, Director of Government Affairs at CMP, submitting testimony here in opposition to this legislation. You know, as we've discussed and you all know, the utility franchise is premised on the recovery of prudently incurred costs. Per Maine law, each public utility furnishes safe, reasonable, and adequate facilities and service in exchange for just and reasonable rates. In the regulatory scheme under which we operate, the PUC determines what's just and reasonable by ensuring that rates provide the revenue required by the utility to perform its public service and attract necessary capital on just and reasonable terms, and considering whether the utility is operating as efficiently as possible and utilizing sound management practices. There are statutory limitations on what can be collected in rates. Contributions to politicians, for example, charitable contributions and advertising are not recoverable in rates, but all other costs are judged either prudent or imprudent by the regulator. In my written testimony, our lawyers have laid out the constitutional arguments with citations and case quotes that I won't review here, except to note that our rate of return is designed to provide sufficient revenue to cover our total cost of service, which include both our operating expenses and adequate return on investment in property and equipment serving the public. CMP is authorized an opportunity, not a guarantee, to earn up to a level set by the PUC and in FERC in rate cases. In reality, we've not always earned our allowed rate of return, and by way of recent history, in 2019 and 2018, our rate of return on common equity did not meet the ROE opportunity of 9.45%. In 2019, it was 5.83%, and in 2018, it was 4.18%. Even where profits are earned, they are typically reinvested, and since 2009, CMP shareholders have reinvested more than profits earned into the system. For example, in the 10-year period from 2011 to 2020, CMP shareholders reinvested 110% into the system. This bill seeks to prohibit the Commission from allowing us to recover costs incurred as a result of a disaster, which is broadly defined by statute to include widespread and severe damage, loss of property resulting from any natural and man-made cause, including but not limited to flood, wind, storm, epidemic, extreme public health emergency, or critical material shortage. Public utilities in Maine cannot be denied the opportunity to recover just and reasonable costs incurred related to disasters, such as storms or the COVID-19 pandemic. These events are not within utilities management or control. To prohibit recovery of prudently incurred costs related to such events would violate the constitutional limits of rate making. We encourage the committee to report this bill out not to pass. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm glad to answer any questions or provide additional information at the work session.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. We will now go on to people who wish to testify neither for nor against, and the chair will recognize Garrett Corbin of the Public Utilities Commission. Garrett.
Hi, good morning again, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, honorable members of the committee. The Public Utilities Commission testifies neither for nor against LD 285, an act to protect utility customers from investor risk for costs incurred due to a disaster. This legislation would prohibit, as we've reviewed, the investor-owned transmission distribution utilities from recovering in rates any costs incurred by the utility as a result of a disaster as defined in state statute. And a footnote in our written testimony explains the types of situations that are considered under Maine law to constitute a disaster. The main point the Commission wishes to acknowledge in our testimony today is that a basic principle of public utility regulation requires utilities to be provided with a reasonable opportunity to recover prudently incurred costs and to obtain a reasonable return on investments associated with its provision of required services. A statutory requirement that a public utility incur costs without a reasonable opportunity to recover those costs raises fundamental legal and constitutional issues. That said, we note the Commission has not conducted a specific analysis of the legal issues associated with LD 285. We mainly wish to raise the issue for the committee's consideration. In addition, the Commission notes that the enactment of this bill could potentially create an undesirable disincentive for utilities to incur costs in the course of providing what may be crucial services during the declaration of a disaster. I just conclude there. We're happy to provide additional information that would be of assistance to your committee.
Are there questions from the committee? Representative Berry.
Thank you. Mr. Corbin, can you please tell us who is responsible and I mean, you know, the buck stops here, responsible for making sure that our grid is hardened against severe weather?
Thanks for the question, Representative Berry. I think that is something that the Commission would look at the utilities' prudence, as I mentioned before, in managing their infrastructure over time. And that's something that is, as the committee might be aware, the Commission's recently opened an inquiry to look into that matter specifically as it relates to, you know, potential what's to come from climate change.
Thank you.
Are you all set, Representative Berry? And just to follow up on that, Mr. Corbin, if I understand what you're saying, I mean, aren't we really all responsible for that? Isn't the legislature responsible as far as public policy to see that our grid is ready to respond? And isn't the PUC also responsible as well as the utilities?
Sure, Senator Lawrence. Yeah, I think, you know, it probably might be commensurate with the amount of time or the window you're looking at. So day to day, of course, would be on the utility. When you're looking at a you know, decades long preparation, that's something bigger picture. And as was noted in previous testimony, FERC is even looking into that on a national level as well. So probably depends on the scale or scope of it as well.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Corbin? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll now go to our public advocate, Barry Hobbins, who is testifying neither for nor against. Barry? We'll give him a minute to jump on. I think he's here now. Barry? You're still muted, Barry.
I think that should be good.
Good.
Okay, good. Thank you. As I said for the third time, Mr. Chair and Chairman Berry and members of the committee, I'm Barry Hobbins here to testify neither for nor against this legislation on behalf of the Office of the Public Advocate. This issue is a controversial issue, obviously. It interfaces with much what's going on through different forums regarding the issue of energy, climate, carbon issues. And it is one that there's no solid answer. I might say that our committee, our office is the coordinator for non-wise alternatives. Again, this is an opportunity to take that quorum in order to talk about how non-wise alternative issues could play in this debate. I'm not trying to make business or promote the office, but that's something that we would like to look into. We also would like to participate in any type of workshops involving this issue. And there's no right or wrong answer. There is policy issues that this legislature has that goes beyond the Public Utilities Commission or rules or regulations. And this is one issue that you have the final say as long as it meets the constitutional guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Hobbins from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. And I will declare this public hearing closed. Again, that is my water bottle because I have not yet brought my gavel over from the office. Okay, we're now on to our next bill. And that is LD 314. Let me make sure I can bring it up on the screen so I can have it in front of me. It is an act to continue the green power electricity offer. And it's presented by its sponsor, Representative Seth Berry. Go ahead.
And good morning again. It is still morning. Senator Lawrence, members of the committee. I'm still Seth Berry, and I'm presenting now LD 314, which is an act to continue the green power electricity offer. This also is one of those bills that was ready to pass. It was a bipartisan not to pass committee report a year ago and died in the pandemic legislative limbo. Again, thank you for voting for it before. I hope you can vote for it again. This is an emergency bill because there's an expiration date coming up on April 1st of this year where the green power standard offer for electricity customers, which is one of the options we make available to Maine consumers for supply, and which supports community-based renewables, is going to expire. So to avoid depriving customers who have availed themselves of this choice, we would like to simply lift that expiration date. I think it was there just as a way to make sure that the program wasn't having adverse consequences. I think the program has proven itself. Those who are willing to pay a little more for a greener choice have been able to do so through the Green Standard offer. It's easy to do, and this is at this point a proven and again purely voluntary program that supports community renewables. So it's not broken. Let's not fix it, and let's keep it going. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. And just an informational moment for the two new members to the legislature, Representative Wood and Representative Kudlow. This is an emergency legislation, and what that means is normally legislation does not take effect until after we adjourn, sine die, meaning our last day. We adjourn without day in the legislature, and it takes effect 90 days after that point to allow the constitutional provision for a citizen's veto of that legislation to happen before the legislation takes place. In the case of legislation where the legislature recognizes an emergency where this has to happen within a certain period of time, there has to be an emergency preamble in the bill. So if you look at the bill on page 2, there is an emergency preamble explaining why it's an emergency, and then it will need to be passed by 2/3 of the elected members of both the House and the Senate in order to go into effect immediately before the 90-day expiration. So I did see your hand up, Representative Wood. Does that answer your question? No? Okay.
No.
Did you have a question for Representative Berry?
I just wanted to understand a little bit more about the green power electricity offer, exactly what that means.
Okay, Representative Berry.
Thank you, Representative Wood, for that question. Maine, as you know, and we've all had a lot thrown at us lately. So if this hasn't become clear, that's entirely forgivable too. But Maine has a competitive market for supply, and we make available what's called a standard offer, where the PUC, for those who do not choose their power supplier, the PUC annually does a request for proposals and selects from among the bidders to provide power to the bulk of us. I think it's around 80% of Mainers do not choose and are with the default or standard offer. In addition, we can choose from a variety of competitive suppliers, Zoom, Ambit, Electricity Maine. There are many, and they're listed, and their rates are listed on the Public Advocate's website, which is very helpful. And then, in addition to that, we have the separate standard offer or default offer for those who want a green, all renewable supply, but really just want to make sure that the PUC procures it. And they'd also like to, by the way, make sure that it's community renewables, that it's not just large grid scale renewables, but it's community renewables, hopefully sited closer to load, bringing some of the benefits that those smaller distributed resources provide. And the creation of the green power standard offer was really to meet that need for people who wanted something a little easier. They didn't have to choose, shop around. They have the benefit that the PUC kind of oversees this program. And by the way, I should have mentioned this is a commission bill. So thank you to the commission for putting it forward. It has that extra community angle as well as being renewably sourced. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
Any follow-up, Representative Wood?
No, thanks. That's
Okay.
helpful.
Any other questions for Representative Berry? Seeing none, thank you very much, Representative. We will go on to our list as soon as I bring it up of individuals wishing to testify on this bill. And our first person in favor of this bill is James Cody from Versant Power. James?
Good morning again, Senator Lawrence and Representative Berry and members of the committee. Nice to be first at bat here a couple of times in a row. Again, I'm James Cody with Bernstein Shore on behalf of Versant Power, and I'll be very brief this morning that we are here today in support of LD 314 and wish to thank Representative Berry and the Public Utilities Commission for bringing this bill forward. Versant Power currently has about 500 customers who have voluntarily elected to enroll in this program, and the timely passage of this legislation allows us the opportunity to limit the amount of disruption possible in terms of making sure that they have a smooth and overall reliable customer experience as this program was set to sunset, but now we might be able to save it and make sure that that is smooth going forward. We also just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that the utilities, Versant in this case, does not have a financial stake in this outcome. We are a facilitator of the program. And to that end, we just want to ensure that the customer experience is as smooth as possible. The Maine Green Power Program is an available and proven option, as Representative Berry suggested, to make sure that customers who wish to do so can support state policy goals and increase their access to renewables. And for those reasons, we urge your support of this bill. Happy to answer any questions or bring any information to work session.
Great. Are there questions for Mr. Cody? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now go on to Melissa Winnie from the Governor's Energy Office. Melissa?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, members of the committee. My name is Melissa Winnie. I am the Energy Policy Analyst with the Governor's Energy Office, and I'm here today to provide testimony on behalf of the office. The GEO testifies in support of LD 314. Thank you to Representative Berry for an overview of the program. It supports the continued development of renewable energy generation in the state by providing these additional avenues to purchase the environmental attributes, or RECs, which are renewable energy certificates. These projects supported by purchasing RECs not only contribute to the state's clean energy goals, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they also support and create workforce opportunities and economic development within the state. Given the voluntary opt-in nature of this program, it really provides the opportunity for Maine people to make their own decision to support renewable energy generation, and this program provides the pathway for them to pursue these opportunities to do so. In order to continue offering that option and avoid discontinuing the opportunity for those that are already enrolled, the GEO also encourages that the committee pass LD 314 in a timely manner prior to the program's expiration on April 1st, 2021, as has been stated. So thank you for your consideration. I will leave it with that and happy to answer any questions or follow up with more information during the work session. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Winnie from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now go on to Stephen Weems of the Solar Energy Association from Maine, who will be testifying in favor of the bill. Stephen?
Good morning, everybody. Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, members of the committee. My name is Steve Weems, Executive Director of the Solar Energy Association of Maine, and we enthusiastically support LD 314, including its emergency clause. Just to identify ourselves briefly again, maybe for the last time, mainly for the benefit of new members, SEAM is a broad coalition advocating for solar projects of all project types and ownership models. We're a non-profit Maine corporation with board membership drawn from municipalities, colleges, conservation organizations, solar installers, community and economic development entities, consumer-owned utilities, and electricity customers, especially residential customers and members of community solar farms. Supporting the green power electricity offer is somewhat outside our lane. We do so because it is a successful program that facilitates several types of renewable energy projects, including solar, via a voluntary program that people like. It's a win-win program for green power project developers and electricity customers alike. We've submitted written testimony with a non-obvious, interesting example of how the green power electricity offer can facilitate solar projects. We invite you to look at that. I'll stop here. Thanks for your service and the opportunity to support LD 314, including its emergency aspect.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Weems? I don't see any, so we'll go on to the next person testifying in favor of the bill, and that is Barry Hobbins, the public advocate. Barry?
Good morning again. It's Barry Hobbins. I'm here this morning, Mr. Chair, and Senator and Representative Berry, members of the committee, to testify in support of LD 314. You know, during this coming session, the committee will consider a number of bills and
Oops, I think you muted again, Barry.
This particular offer, the green power offer, has no direct cost to consumers unless the consumers opt in to participate. A close look at this program evidences that this program continues to grow, and even throughout the time of the pandemic, period when marketing efforts were virtually non-existent. There is a consumer demand for a method to support renewable generation in Maine without the burden of researching or verifying the renewable source being placed on consumers. This product provides consumers with the ability to support Maine-based renewable. I urge the committee to support this bill. It is one that absolutely needs a provision, a sunset provision, to be repealed in order to get consumers in Maine out and understand that this is a good bill and not wait till September when the bill would be repealed. Thank you very much for your time and look forward to any questions you might have or other information you might have that you would like my office to provide you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Are there any questions for Mr. Hobbins? Representative Grochowski.
Thank you. If I may, I just want to thank the Office of the Public Advocate for adding information to your website when I pointed out that it might be a helpful place for people to find good info about this program. So I just want to thank you for being responsive.
Well, we
your
appreciate
website does a great job helping regular folks like me and our constituents figure out what exactly is going on in this complicated world. So thank you.
Well, we're very pleased, Representative, to have a conscientious bird dog make good suggestions, and we're still working on it. So anyone in the committee feels that they would like to see further information on any topic, we're working at making it even more comprehensive than it is now. And that's one of our obligations is to ratepayers.
Other questions for Mr. Hobbins? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll go on to the last individual testifying on this bill. It's Garrett Corbin of the PUC. He'll be testifying in favor of the bill. Garrett?
Great. Good morning. Once again, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, and honorable members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name's still Garrett Corbin. I am testifying last again, but this time on behalf of the PUC in support of LD 314, an act to repeal the sunset of the green power offer. The program, as has been noted, allows customers to choose locally generated renewable energy such as wind, hydro, and biomass for their home or business. Just to quickly provide some background, the program's genesis came about during the 2009 legislative session. The legislature enacted an act to establish community-based renewable energy, a pilot program at the time. Part B of that act required the commission to arrange for a green power supply offer and administer a competitive process to select the provider of that offer. The design and implementation of the program and resolution of all the issues regarding the transmission, distribute, T&D utilities, billing service arrangements took some work and time. And ultimately, the program known as Maine Green Power was officially launched in April of 2013. I just, side note here, maingreenpower.com, it's just ME for Maine, so megreenpower.com. It has a lot of helpful information on it as well. And if you add /FAQ to that website, it takes you to their frequently asked questions page. And there's also a lot of good information about how it works there. But just to elaborate on that myself, through this program, the customers have the option to match all or a portion of their existing electricity use with renewable energy produced in Maine through the purchase and retirement of RECs, as has been noted, or renewable energy credits. Maine Green Power customers voluntarily pay a monthly premium equal to $8.95 for 1 block of renewable energy that's equal to a megawatt hour, which is added directly to their electricity bills, and customers are allowed to participate in half block or multiple block levels even. Looking at the more recent history of the program, despite the fact that coronavirus-related considerations severely restricted the program's outreach efforts to new customers during 2020, Maine Green Power still continued to grow by almost 7% in total number of participants and more than 16% in total megawatt hours of renewable energy supported. Finally, to double down on why the legislation contains this emergency preamble, pursuant to the current statute, it's Title 35A, Section 3212A, subsection 3, the program will be repealed again, as has been noted, on April 1st, which is just over a month away. And enacting legislation within a month is I think it's safe to say, a tight window, which is why we were hoping to have this passed last year, and why we needed to put, as Senator Lawrence really helpfully explained, why we needed to put the emergency preamble on this this year. Of course, the bill died last year due to the session timing, the pandemic. At least that's our view. So without this authority extended, the utilities will not continue the program. The customers will be removed beginning April 1st, and we'll have to create it again from whole cloth. Again, while there's a cost to participating customers, there's no cost to ratepayers as a whole associated with the program, because those participating customers choose to, on their own volition, participate. And given the strong demand to date, we expect the program will continue to grow. It appears to provide a valuable option for electricity customers to voluntarily support the development of renewable energy in Maine, with modest demands on the commission, customers, and utilities. So I guess just in closing, we'd be happy to continue to work with you on this bill to answer any questions, and to paraphrase the way the sponsor, Representative Barry, closed. If it ain't broke, he said, let's continue it. I'd say, if it ain't broke, don't kill it.
Great. Are there questions for Mr. Corbin? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now declare the public hearing on this matter closed. So we are back on Thursday, Deirdre, is that correct? And I believe for more public hearings, correct?
Yes, we're back Thursday, and as a reminder to the committee, the joint hearing in AFA is tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the portions of the biennial budget under EUT's jurisdiction.
Okay, and anything else, Ben or Deirdre, we need to know while we're on for scheduling purposes?
Just Deirdre's email about the 12th.
Okay.
Yeah. So if everybody can get back to me on that, that would be great.
Sorry, are we still live streaming, Ben?
Yeah, I can shut it down now.
Okay, why don't you shut it down? And Nicole, we're just talking about kind of organizational procedural stuff right now.